Welcome to the Ringer NBA channel. I'm Seerat Sohi, and I'm back to break down an LSU-Iowa game that, beyond living up to the hype, is a matchup that we're going to be talking about for years, with characters that have basically nestled themselves into our lives and don't really feel like they're going anywhere. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Flau'jae Johnson, Kim Mulkey, Lisa Bluder, and then, honestly, some people we might not really see much again. You know, unsung heroes like Gabby Marshall and Kate Martin, who are going to graduate and move on to lives that, you know, won't be unlike yours and mine. That's part of what makes me emotional about college basketball. Let's talk about the game. Let's start with a moment that I felt like I knew that LSU had no shot of getting back into last night's game. 2 minutes into the third quarter, Caitlin Clark's second logo three of the quarter over the outstretched arms of Haley Van Lith. Bless her heart, Kim Mulkey did her no favors with that game plan of guarding her one-on-one and giving up 5 inches to her. And Clark, after hitting that shot, which is usually when you start to see the Caitlin Clark theatrics, the crowd pumping, arm raises, like the let's fucking go of it all. But she goes back on defense and not a single muscle in her face is moving. And it was just such a departure from what we're used to seeing from her. And if you read Wright Thompson's great ESPN profile on her, you know that controlling her emotions is something that she's been working on. And that told me right then and there, the Hawkeyes, they had a plan tactically, they had a plan emotionally, and they were running it not to surgical perfection. That's perfection is not part of the Caitlin Clark experience. She did have 5 turnovers in this game, but they just kept going at it over and over again. They just ran their game plan. Elevate above the turbulence. Don't make it about revenge. Don't make it about beating LSU. Don't play this game in the high voltage emotional terrain that LSU thrives in. Don't make it the type of fight that they love to have and that riles them up, and then you end up getting lost in it, like what happened last year with Clark's fouls, the technical fouls, the complaining, just a team basically essentially like going on tilt. No, make it about yourselves. And man, when I tell you the look or, you know, lack thereof on Clark's face was one of the most terrifying things that I've seen in professional sports. It reminded me of LeBron James' stone cold demeanor hitting shot after shot in Game 6 of the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals. Like, it was just ruthless. Like, I mean, that's classic Caitlin Clark for you. Shout out to Sydney Fulter, by the way, who has become kind of like the yin to Clark's yang, her Draymond Green almost, if you will. Early in the game, Reese, when she had the ball in her hands, she was crushing Iowa. She got off to a great start, and then she didn't really see the ball much after that because Iowa's defense was denying it, sagging off of HVL and POA, letting them shoot. Rebecca Lobo, calling the game for ESPN, was practically begging Kim Mulkey to use Michaela Williams, who was hitting 3-pointers for them, as the entry passer to get Reese the ball. And we just never saw it. We never saw, you know, the LSU game plan that I would have liked to see. And this has kind of been the story with this team. Just a ton of talent, so much potential on both ends, that frankly, like, it just never really came to fruition for a full 40 minutes when it actually mattered. There were just, I mean, there's a lot going on with LSU, obviously, this season, on the court, off the court, trying to integrate new pieces. A lot of people between, you know, HVL and Morrow, 2 transfers that were used to having the ball in their hands. Angel Reese, the increased amount of pressure on her. Kim Mulkey, you know, the multiple stories that she seemed to have, frankly, had a better game plan combating the PR mess that she was in than she did for this game. And that's kind of the only thing that I wish was a little bit different. I wish that LSU had the same game plan or an equally as thought out and versatile game plan as Iowa did. And that's, to me, the Caitlin Clark of it, of course, matters. But that, to me, stands out as a huge reason for why Iowa won this game. But just for a moment, looking ahead for a second to UConn versus Iowa, I don't think that we are going to see that coverage going forward on Caitlin Clark for the rest of, well, you know, what is left of her short college career. Frankly, we didn't see a lot of it this season. But, you know, just looking a little bit at how UConn handled USC and Juju Watkins in their win in the second game of this night, I just think it's going to be a very different game plan for Iowa to attack. You know, they have so many great perimeter defenders. Paige Beckers, you know what happens when you backcut Paige Beckers? She recovers. You know what happens when Nico Mule is guarding you? You don't really get the ball. You don't score. they will probably run a lot of, like, one thing I liked in the USC game, they're kind of like surprised Juju. Like, they sprung some traps on her. Now, Juju, great player, did not have more than 6 assists in a game in her freshman year. So trapping her is a different beast than it is to trap Caitlin Clark, who, leads the tournament with 40 assists and no one else is particularly close. So there are going to be subtle differences, but this UConn team, they're incredibly disciplined. They've got Gino Auriemma, they've got experience. And they've got the personnel. Not that LSU didn't, but I think they'll use the personnel a little bit better. So that's good. That's going to be pretty interesting. They just didn't get the performances that they needed from their role players, and I think that this for Iowa, it's going to come down to that as well. I see Paige Beckers as kind of like, if you're an NBA fan, I see her almost as like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander type of player. She is incredibly well-rounded. She's definitely the better defensive player. She uses her size really well. She can like dissect a defense. She's a grounding force. Now with Caitlin Clark, she's a very different type of player. She's like your Steph Curry. She is much more of like an expansive, like make you believe with her three-pointers type of player and her really edgy playmaking. Paige, also a good playmaker. In her right too, but just not on that same level as Clark. And the other thing too that I think we're going to be hearing about is Gino Auriemma had an opportunity to have Caitlin Clark be a part of UConn. Caitlin Clark, growing up, wanted to go to UConn, and Gino, now infamously, never made the call. And maybe it was because he already had Paige Beckers in his pocket, right? So, and he has gone on record saying that he thinks that Paige is the best player in the tournament, which as he should. And look, Gino's already trying to get ahead of it. Take a look at this.
Yeah, I hope Caitlin Clark had a personal agenda against LSU. And I know there's nothing personal between me and her, so I don't need to be seeing her drop 50 on us next weekend, So I love her. I think she's the best player. Forget I ever said Paige is the best player in the country. I think she's the best player of all time. I don't know whoever said that I said that Paige is the best player in the country.
All these things that I do think are going to play into the conversation going into the Final Four. But I also wonder if after everything that we saw in this game from Caitlin Clark, if we're just in a different place with her now. Like, for so long in her career, she had a point to prove. She played with this unmistakable, sometimes destructive edge that was undeniably a part of what drew fans to her. And I'm not saying we'll never see it again, but it feels like she's transitioning to this new space. And we see it with great athletes where they come up against these moments of self-definition where they either evolve or they stay in the same place. You saw it with Jordan in the early 90s, that era of LeBron that I talked about earlier. It's this rare sort of liminal space between, transitioning from a place of like discovering the depth of your power to learning how to best use it, and I think we'll still see some of the showmanship, the arena raising arm waves, all those things, the trash talk. But I think, in the past, she would get lost in the emotions of the game. And now I think she kind of wields them in her favor. So I don't know if she's going to go into this game thinking at all about UConn or Gino and how she could have gone there. Obviously, going to Iowa was an incredible move for her career. And just, being able to put her home state on the map, it obviously ended up being the right call. I don't think that if she could go back, she would go and say, I want to play on UConn. So it's going to be interesting. I think we're entering a new chapter in the arc of Caitlin Clark's career.